I forgot to write an intro. I don't have an intro written.
Welcome to Two-Headed Hero, presented by George Lucas, the king of duck nipples. My name is Roland Coons.
My name is Boss Sauce. And together,
we are the Two-Headed Hero.
It was backwards.
Right. So.
Yes. Intro well done. Mutant Year Zero: Road to Eden is a heartwarming tale of animal friendship. A plucky duck and persistent piggy set out from the safety of their home on a perilous journey in search of Hammond, a lost farmhand. The elderly farmer that owns the ranch has succumbed to a grave illness, and only Hammond can get the place running in tip-top shape before the big harvest.
Can the anthropomorphic duo brave the dangers of the deadly wilderness? Will they find Hammond before the rowdy locals get a hold of him?
Well, dear players, the answer to these questions, and more, begin with you.
At first glance, Mutant Year Zero: Road to Eden seems to be a post-apocalyptic XCOM, but with more sneaking. And on some level, that's what it is. The cover and action point mechanics are nearly ripped whole hog from those still excellent remakes. There's more going on here, though. Instead of bequeathing you innumerable X-clones, customizable to the extent that they are devoid of all personality, Mutant Year Zero: Road to Eden, a title I refuse to shorten, focuses on a handful of unique squad mates. They're fully voice-acted to boot, giving Mutant Year Zero: Road to Eden a Jagged Alliance vibe. From now on, I shall revel in silly names, and those with multiple subtitles shall be glorified.
Okay. In addition to being one hell of a long title to put in a script, Mutant Year Zero: Road to Eden is a challenging stealth and strategy title. If I had to pick one phrase that would sum up the experience, post-apocalyptic XCOM by way of Howard the Duck would be pretty close to nailing it.
Okay, so this is not spooky at all. Walking through a graveyard. Fantastic.
I'm a dead duck.
The game's mix of difficult turn-based tactical combat, stealth and ambushing mechanics, exploration, and a healthy helping of tongue-in-cheek humor all add up to a rewarding 12 to 14-hour experience.
That building there? The House of Bones. It was a fortress full of tiny, flesh-eating monsters called students. They came here every day to learn how to become bigger monsters. Now you hear the story. It's nothing! It's nothing! Never mind!
From verdant valleys to snow-covered mountains, the environments in Mutant Year Zero are lush with detail.
What are these people doing?
Running away, I think. Maybe the Red Plague hit their town and they needed to evacuate.
Evacuating or stampeding over each other to be the first one out. Dumbass ancients.
Used future ruins teem with plants and wildlife, a far cry from the desolation found in similar settings such as Fallout. Maps are fairly small, but since you'll spend most of the time in a zoomed-out exploration view, this level of environmental detail was a welcome one.
Once you get the chance to zoom in a little closer, you'll be able to see that the members of your traveling freak show can be customized with equally detailed hats and outfits. All of these serve to add to the used future Earth theme found throughout Mutant Year Zero's visuals. Characters are animated in detail, but the models themselves, even for the more humanoid combatants, seem to have some strangely exaggerated proportions. This is probably a stylistic choice, but still comes off a bit as having gangs of weird, giant 10-year-olds running around on the map. Mutant Year Zero tries for the dynamic XCOM action cam when it gets down to the gunplay. While the effort is appreciated, this is often where we see the game pop open at the seams. There's the odd rare clipping issue, and bullets will sometimes fly directly through character models while still registering a miss. There's also an occasional but noticeable stutter when initially arriving at a zone. Despite all these minor gripes, Mutant Year Zero doesn't do that bad a job of taking advantage of Unreal Engine 4 to make the post-apocalypse look pretty good.
Mutant Year Zero opens with a beautiful cutscene that does a pretty great job of establishing characters and tone. The rest of the story cutscenes play out as motion graphics.
But it's a good thing ghouls can't read. They ignored the diary hidden inside Hammond's desk. Me and Ducks aren't big readers either.
Borman, your tusked, tough guy pig mutant pal, serves as a sort of narrator throughout the story's exposition, and the rest of the game's voice lines share the same level of quality.
I keep looking for dead duck bodies, but I never see one. Are we the only mutants in the zone?
You're right. There are no mutants in the zone. I've been checking bodies ever since you mentioned it.
Speaking of sounds, Mutant Year Zero is a treat for the ears. Your merry band of misfits banter back and forth while crunching through snow-covered ruins or thick forest floors.
Elder Almighty. That's a metal man. A real metal man. Walking around and everything.
Eavesdropping on the cannibalistic citizens of the zone yields some truly funny dialogues and sometimes some important clues.
And stop calling me ugly face. Look at your face.
I can't look at my face, it's my face! Now put your eyes out there and look for intruders.
Weapon effects are nice and meaty, especially the sharp thwack of a bullet hitting its mark or the combustible poof of a Molotov exploding. Come on, Gaper. Yeah. Deactivated the robot? No? Uh-oh. All of this is set on top of a synth-driven soundtrack that's somewhat reminiscent of classic John Carpenter movies. Strategy games that adhere to a grid system often try to mask this fact. Some attempt this with clever construction, such as the aforementioned XCOM series. Others try to get by with creative use of the setting, as seen in our recent review of Warhammer 40k Mechanicus. Mutant Year Zero allows your motley crew to free roam. Have you been to the Freem Room?
Welcome.
I Freem Roam the Freem Room.
Welcome to the Freem Room. Begin freeming.
Freem freely. Mutant Year Zero allows your motley crew to free roam the environments in order to approach the dangers from an advantageous position, or sometimes even avoid them entirely. The game lends itself very well to controller support, but desk jockeys will find it to be equally playable with a keyboard and mouse.
The bit I appreciate most about Mutant Year Zero Road to Eden is that the devs have made exploring their weird wasteland matter. Not only does success in its skirmishes hinge upon finding proper locations to flank and surprise your enemies, but resources are spread across it just so, rewarding the diligent player with shiny treats and evoking that all-important scavenger fantasy.
Defibrillator. There's instructions to use this on somebody who's lying down. Maybe something to aid sleep or to relax.
The minimap is nowhere to be seen, and with good reason. With it, Mutant Year Zero Road to Eden's small but unique environs would feel cramped. Without, they feel endless and surprising.
This explorative approach to deployment feels much more organic. The act of prowling through the zone, stealthily taking down raiders that stray too far from the group one by one until you can ambush the leaders, has a really satisfying feel. Since your trio of troublemakers is always outnumbered and outgunned, this stealth element becomes necessary to shave down the game's encounters to a manageable size.
This is where Mutant Year Zero Road to Eden's precarious balance starts to be an issue. You have to make doubly sure to do the mental math necessary to take a guard's health pool down in one round, and more often than not, you'll be cutting it close by relying on critical hits. A single missed shot or misstep can bring the full brunt of the enemy forces down upon you, sometimes causing squad wipes and mission failures. Although a robust save system means little time will be lost, the temptation to save scum your way through the stealth encounters is nearly irresistible.
When you're neck deep in the heat of the turn-based combat, the Stalkers can rely on a host of abilities and weapons to turn the tide. Weapons can be modded and upgraded, and some additional squad perks can be unlocked by hunting down artifacts throughout the zone.
Each mutant has their own skill tree to unlock, although several trees have overlapping abilities, and your choices are permanent. This can result in different playstyles depending on who you recruit to your squad. A group of corpse-eating half-men is going to play far differently than a pack of frog-jumping snipers.
You'll need every advantage since the bigger encounters can often come down to last hits. Scouring the maps for secret equipment and spare parts is all but needed. Backtracking to previously avoided encounters for precious experience can be vital to survival. Mutant Year Zero's beginning is therefore the most brutal part of the entire experience, as players lack most of these special abilities and resources. Many famous post-apocalyptic CRPGs feature this same kind of front-loaded difficulty curve, so it doesn't feel too out of place to find it here. Mutant Year Zero does have selectable difficulty, but these settings seem to influence only damage done by the enemies, how often stalkers can use their mutant powers, and how much health is recovered post-battle. Even on normal difficulty, Mutant Year Zero is tough enough to give experienced strategy gamers a hard time.
Minor missteps were deadly at first, but as I leveled up my squad and found more characters and equipment, some encounters became trivial. Fitting for the power fantasy of the survivor, pulling themselves up by their bootstraps. However, I did notice some large bumps in flavor
survivability.
However, I did notice some large bumps in nacho survivability.
Hidden behind a wall of tortilla chips.
However, I did notice some large bumps in player survivability hidden behind particular artifact unlocks and ability combinations, meaning that players will gain those needed boosts at different times or possibly miss them entirely.
The enemy AI in Mutant Year Zero is a little bit on the weak side. After some testing, we were able to find that enemies aren't beholden to the ability cooldowns or reloading mechanics, which is a little disappointing. However, it's possible to bait the enemy factions into attacking each other, and then keep your distance until you can move in to mop up the survivors. These chaotic three-sided battles are some of the most fun fights I had in the game.
Yeah! You finally figured out how to use that thing?
While Mutant Year Zero isn't the most polished or lengthy strategy experience out there, it's plenty of game for the price tag. It adds a ton of goofy charm to a genre that usually comes off as overly grim and serious. Recent updates have added a sort of remix mode in the form of Stalker Trials to give the game more replayability. And, just on the horizon, we have an entire expansion to look forward to. If by some stretch of the imagination you found the game too easy, there's 2 more brutal difficulty levels. Mutant Year Zero is far from boring. Cause the bore.
Oh, I get it, it's a bore.
Yeah.
It's also far from ducking.
The challenging gameplay and endearing characters make it a great choice for a rainy weekend. I give it a hearty hoist of my horns.
On the whole, Mutant Year Zero Road to Eden is an easy post-apocalypse for me to recommend. Squad-based tactics games with this much character are few and far between. Mutant Year Zero Road to Eden steps in to complete the unfinished business that Jagged Alliance left behind.
Can you burn a hole through this with some kind of eye laser?